Pompeo will arrive in Guyana this Thursday to the first stop of a three-day tour that will also take him to Colombia and the Amazonian border areas of Brazil, parts of Washington's campaign against President Nicolás Maduro. Vietnamese authorities are preparing to evacuate 1.1 million people ahead of weekend's expected arrival of tropical storm Maul. The head of Libya's UN-recognized Government of National Accord said he planned to step down within 6 weeks as part of efforts to broker a peace agreement. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Laura Palmeiro. Mike Pompeo is the first U.S. Secretary of State to visit Guyana and Suriname as the discovery of oil fields of sudden interest in the small South American nations. Pompeo will arrive in Guyana this Thursday, the first stop of a three-day tour that will also take him to Colombia and the Amazonian border areas of Brazil, part of Washington's campaign against President Nicolás Maduro. The visit to Georgetown happens a few weeks after the newly elected President Irfan Ali appointed a new cabinet. Local media in Guyana questioned Pompeo's interest in the country as they demanded to know who are part of the secret arrangements between local politicians and the U.S. ExxonMobil that just bought parts of another 2 oil blocks, according to several media reports. The American multinational already owns a Starbrook block consisting in 6.6 million acres. However, there is no confirmed information on who bought Kanghe and K-Tour blocks. The Sudanese public is entitled to know the owners of the Kanghe and Starbrook blocks. A feature of democratic governance is transparency, something that is sadly lacking in Guyana, says the editorial published in the local media. ExxonMobil announced in 2015 it had found one of the world's largest oil reserves in years in the waters of Guyana, with a U.S. giant also heavily involved in Suriname.
Está com pressa, está com a consciência dos inocentes. Nós que estamos com pressa, nós
Workers'
queremos
Party of Brazil rejected U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's visit, scheduled for tomorrow, to the city of Boa Vista in the northern state of Roraima, bordering Venezuela. The Workers' Party points out its deep concern about the arrival of the head of U.S. diplomacy to that area, where Pompeo will meet with Venezuelan immigrants. The administration of far-right President Jair Bolsonaro demonstrates once again its submission to the ruling of Donald Trump's government. Isolated about 500 kilometers away from the main city of the northern state of Pará, Brazil, the riverine and indigenous communities of Terra do Meio receive medical attention via telemedicine. We invite you to see more of this story in the report brought to us by Nayata Wane from our media partner Brasil de Fato.
In a pioneering use of technologies, the indigenous communities and those who live near the river located in Pará are receiving medical attention via telemedicine without leaving their territories. The initiative was developed thanks to the local residents that created an association with the Social Health Institute, the U.S. organization Health and Harmony, and the Pará University's Faculty of Medicine.
The Middle Earth is a region made up today of 5 conservation units and 5 indigenous lands with very difficult logistic access. There are communities that can only be accessed after 5 days of trip by boat. A great dispersion of the population and healthcare has always been a challenge in these communities, and telemedicine has emerged as an opportunity to solve the health problems or at least improve care, but not just during the pandemic, also in the later period.
Vocês puderem perguntar para quem não participou da reunião hoje, né, para os familiares, para os parentes de vocês.
This initiative will benefit in a first stage at least 1,000 people that live near the river and 500 indigenous people also living in the area. In order to help people to be connected, internet points have been installed in the 6 health posts. The appointments are scheduled by a computer system and the doctors evaluate if it is necessary to travel to the city.
The most used means of communication in the extractive reservoirs was an amateur shortwave radio. With the installation of internet points, it was possible to create a weekly podcast that guides and informs family about COVID-19 prevention measures and the advance of the virus in the municipality of Altamira. With this combination of telemedicine assistance, distance, and information, it was possible to protect the communities.
The initiative shows the self-management of these inhabitants of this territory that articulates and organize themselves to determine the needs and the best places for the installation of the access points.
We know that we live in an isolated place with great challenges to meet, and it is very important to be within the project that is related to health. We have to participate to be able to say, in fact, what we need to know because we know it. We have to do so that we feel contemplated in relation to care in communities.
The municipality of Altamira has already 112 deaths and almost 4,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19. For specialists, isolation has helped to delay by almost 5 months the arrival of the virus to these populations. And with this new technology, it will be possible to reduce the COVID-19 risks for the population of Terra do Meio.
In Barbados, Prime Minister Mia Mottley announced the creation of the Republic Transition Committee after the decision of eliminating the word royal from all institutions of the country. Mottley informed that the Republic Transition Committee will be formed to advise government and all related institutions bearing the word royal, such as Royal Barbados Police Force, will change. Past Republic Barbados name will remain just Barbados, not Republic of. She also indicated that Barbados received no form of serious aid from the United Kingdom, so it is important for Barbadian children to aspire to be head of a state in their own nation.
We've been having these discussions for almost 20 years, and I think that it is our judgment that across political parties, across generations, that we've reached a stage where we believe that we have the confidence in ourselves that a young Barbadian can aspire to become the head of state of this nation, and that will complete our process of independence and sovereignty. We became an independent nation in 1966, and this is the most natural step for us to make. Other than for the appointment of certain diplomatic positions as well as certain forms of honors, really and truly everything else that we have done for the last almost 54 years, we have done as a sovereign nation. So it's not meant to be a divisive action. In fact, we have a very good relationship with the royal family. We have, at a personal level, I have a very good relationship with Prince Charles. We respect Her Majesty. But I do think that at this point in time, we have a duty to young Barbadians so that they too can believe that they can aspire to be the head of state in their own country, in the same way that in the United Kingdom, they would believe that they would want a British head of state, or in the United States of America, they would prefer to have an American head of state rather than a president from somewhere else.
In Guatemala, the Community Soup Kitchen project has concluded its service for families affected by the novel coronavirus pandemic. Our correspondent Santiago Botón brings us the details.
These are the last food rations that the Community Soup Kitchen provided to people affected by the health and economic crisis sparked by the COVID-19 pandemic in a sector of the Guatemalan capital.
From 1,300 to 1,500 lunches a day, and then the situation started to normalize, so we lowered the number of lunches as people also returned to their normal lives.
The Community Soup Kitchen was installed next to the presidential residence and was visited by informal economy traders, the unemployed, and people excluded from government programs, according to the volunteers.
For example, the state will support benefits that were incomplete, that did not satisfy, or did not meet the needs of the people. And what we can say about the religion and the church, while they are preferential option for the poor, they are not here for them.
For the marginalized, the closure of the Community Soup Kitchen is considered a hard blow, as it had become their daily source of food.
This was the source of lunch, as the Community Soup Kitchen, which provided them with lunch every day, and since now the situation has settled, and they close up here, so people are going to starve.
The promoters report that this humanitarian aid service was not spared from the harassment linked to the state. Recently, the Presidential Security Service suggested a search for explosives among the food they served.
They threw there with explosives inside the bags and opened the bread bags. The dogs smelled the bread, touched the bread, and it was a donation they came to drop off.
Functioned for more than 5 months with the help of volunteers. Meanwhile, President Alexandre Guillamette has informed the media that since April of this year, he has distributed over 46,000 food kits in the poor neighborhoods.
Santiago Botón, TeleSUR, Ciudad de Guatemala.
And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Vietnamese authorities are preparing to evacuate 1.1 million people ahead of this weekend's expected arrival of tropical storm Moul. Moul is gaining strength as it approaches the Vietnamese coast. According to the Minister of Agriculture, Nguyen Xuan Cong, in addition to this massive evacuation, the affected provinces have ordered all boats to return to port, and the army has deployed 256,000 soldiers. This Thursday, the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson condemned a high-level visit to Taiwan by a U.S. envoy, saying it will encourage separatist forces on the island.
The U.S. deliberately arranged Under-Secretary of State Craig's visit to Taiwan. This seriously violates the One China principle and 3 U.S.-China joint communiques and encourages the arrogant attitude of Taiwan independence separatist forces and damages U.S.-China relations and the peace and stability of the Taiwan Strait. China strongly opposes this and has already made stern representations to the U.S. We urge the U.S. to fully recognize the high sensitivity of the Taiwan issue, strictly abide by the One China principle and the U.S.-China 3 joint communiques, immediately stop U.S.-Taiwan official visits, and improving substantive relations and prudently handle issues concerning Taiwan. China will take a necessary response according to the development of the situation.
The deaths from COVID-19 since the onset of the pandemic amounted to over 900,000. The COVID-19 cases exceeded 29.3 million, according to the World Health Organization. The multilateral organization added that the current fatality rate of about 5,000 deaths per day puts the world on its way to surpass 1 million deaths by the end of September. The region of the Americas continues as the COVID-19 epicenter with about 15 million patients and is also the one with the highest death toll. The region is followed by South Asia with 5.6 million deaths. Meanwhile, Europe registers 4.8 million infections and the Middle East 2.1 million. The highest number of deaths have been registered in the United States, followed by Brazil, India, Mexico, and the United Kingdom. The director of the World Health Organization for Europe, Hans Kluge, warns of alarming rates of COVID-19 transmission across the continent.
Summer, we were able to see the impact of strict lockdown measures. Our efforts, our sacrifices paid off. In June, cases hit an all-time low. The September case numbers, however, should serve as a wake-up call for all of us. Although these numbers reflect more comprehensive testing, it also shows alarming rates of transmission across the region.
Hans Kluge also voiced concern over shortening the COVID-19 quarantine periods.
We have a very serious situation unfolding before us. Weekly cases have now exceeded those reported when the pandemic first peaked in Europe in March. Last week, the region's weekly tally exceeded 300,000 100,000 patients. More than half of European countries have reported a greater than 10% increase in cases in the past 2 weeks. Knowing the immense individual and societal impact, even a slight reduction in the length of quarantine can have, and giving the figures I have just mentioned, I encourage countries of the region to make scientific due process with their experts and explore safe reduction options.
According to the organization's figures, nearly 5 million COVID-19 cases have been recorded and more than 227,000 related deaths in the 53 countries that are members of the World Health Organization Europe. The number of daily cases recorded is currently around 40,000 to 50,000, which can be compared to a daily peak of 43,000 on April 1st, although testing in many countries have increased considerably. London residents queued outside a COVID-19 testing centre in Enfield, near London, as Britain faces a COVID-19 test shortage. The UK government admits an increase in demand for virus tests is posing problems after hospital authorities warned that delays in the system were jeopardizing healthcare services. The UK is the fourth hardest hit nation in Europe by the pandemic. According to Johns Hopkins University figures, the UK has reported nearly 380,000 COVID-19 cases. However, the UK has the highest death toll in the continent, with more than 41 deaths reported. The Office of National Statistics, which uses broader criteria for counting COVID-19 fatalities, has said closer to 58,000 Britons have died from the virus. And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us.
Who's moving the chessmen? What interests motivate the actors behind each event? The board is deployed there. Critical move. Investigates every event from Monday to Friday. Only on TeleSUR.
Welcome back to From the South. The head of Libya's UN-recognized Government of National Accord said Wednesday he planned to step down within 6 weeks as part of an effort to broker a peace agreement. Libya has endured almost a decade of violent chaos since the 2011 NATO-backed uprising that toppled the killed Mohammed Gaddafi. The National Accord government, headed until now by Fayez al-Sarraj, has battled against a rival administration in eastern Libya led by strongman Khalifa Haftar, whose offensive against the regime in Tripoli recently ground to a halt after more than a year of deadly conflict. Both sides have since met for peace talks in Morocco after announcing last month a surprise ceasefire and pledging national elections. Sarraj said during a brief televised address on Wednesday evening that he was willing to leave his post in favor of the new executive determined by the talks.
أعلن
I announce to all my sincere wish to cede my functions to the next administration before the end of October at the latest.
On Wednesday, Palestine called for unity to stop the U.S.-Israeli plot that threatens peace in the region. The Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Shadeh stated that the normalization of relations between some Arab countries and the Israeli regime isn't a blow to the Arab Peace Initiative. The Prime Minister considered these normalizations part of the so-called deal of the century. Mohammed also denounced that the pact between Bahrain and the AUE was with Israel, signed in Washington on Tuesday, will not change the reality. In that sense, the Prime Minister urged the Palestinian people to remain united and to strengthen the resistance to stop the enemy's plot. And Russia will send 100 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine to India, which on Wednesday registered a daily record of 97,859 cases of infection. India has confirmed so far more than 5.1 million COVID-19 cases. The Indian health authorities registered over 1,100 deaths in the last 24 hours. The nation's death toll from COVID stands at more than 83,000. This figure could be even higher since many of the deaths from COVID-19 have not been reported. Experts believe that the distribution of the Sputnik V vaccine in the Asian country will start by the end of this year. It will depend on the results of the Phase 3 trials in Russia. On Thursday, hundreds of angry residents clashed with government forces in the main city of Indian-administered Kashmir after a firefight left 3 suspected rebels and a young woman dead. Counterinsurgency police and the federal paramilitary forces surrounded the Batamalu neighborhood of Srinagar after midnight following a tip-off that armed militants were hiding inside a residential house, triggering an exchange of fire. As news of the deaths spread, hundreds of residents took to the streets, throwing stones at government forces who fired tear gas and metal pellets. The crowd shouted slogans such as "Long live Pakistan" and "We want freedom." No injuries were immediately reported from the clashes. Prime Minister from Thailand, Pranshu Chanshocha, has issued a public call for people not to gather for an anti-government rally this weekend because of the risk of spreading the coronavirus. Thailand has so far been relatively successful in the containing of the disease. The Health Ministry on Thursday announced no new coronavirus cases, leaving the total of 3,000, including 58 deaths.
Let me tell all protesters, now, loudly and clearly, that I hear you have political grievances and that you have issues with the Constitution. I respect your opinions, but right now our country has some very much more immediately painful issues that it must address, and that is the economic destruction brought about by COVID. Let's not make the situation worse than it is.
South Africa will go from upcoming September 21st to alert level 1 lockdown due to COVID-19, the minimum of the 5 conceived by the country to contain the pandemic as much as possible. In a TV broadcast, President Cyril Ramaphosa explained on Wednesday that given the current COVID-19 situation in the country, it is time to move into what will become our new normality while the coronavirus is with us. After consultations with representatives of provincial and local governments and based on the advice of scientists and commitments of the several stakeholders, the President said the Cabinet decided that the country should go to alert level 1. In addition, with the stage alert level 1, South Africa will gradually and cautiously release restrictions on international travel, allowing round-trip travel for business, pleasure and other reasons as for October 1st, 2020. And we have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Laura Palmeiro. Thank you for watching.